When we're seeking solutions for relationship struggles that we're having, it can feel so hard, right? It can feel like we're not sure what's going to work, even if we're on that path of trying to find solutions. So, in today's video, I want to talk about why there are several reasons, really big reasons, for hope. Hey everyone, I'm Sonia, and on this channel, I give you tips and strategies and insights to help you live your best life and have the best relationships. I am an IAT certified and Wayfinder certified coach. IAT is an attachment style healing method, and so that's where the relationship stuff often comes in. And Wayfinder is a life coaching program, and that has many techniques for tackling things like limiting beliefs, living your best life, and also some relationship things as well in that. So this is actually going to be a pretty quick video, short and sweet and to the point, but really important, I feel like. Because hope, right? I mean, so much of even when we're doing the work, even if we start to get an inkling of hope, I think there's a lot of the times it can just come back in, these doubts, these what ifs, that sort of feeling of drudgery and, the stuff that just doesn't feel good about struggling in the relationship feels like it's coming along with us, as we're trying to find the solutions and do the work. So I just wanted to have this really positive video today because really there is so much reason for hope. I mean, that's why I got into this work, right? Is that it was this amazing transformation that I experienced myself. Like even more than my trainings, I think what makes me really want to work with people and feel qualified to work with them is that I've been through this journey myself. And so, of course, on the other side, it's easy to say we have hope, but I think it's possible to have hope and remind ourselves of these hopeful aspects as we go through the journey of healing and of changing too. Okay, so the first reason to have so much hope is that going on this journey of insight, perhaps you found me because it's around attachment style and attachment style healing. Perhaps it's just around realizing that, something needs to change in your relationship dynamic or communication. Whatever that is, the insight is so important and such a key. It's like this key that unlocks the door to the path that you will be taking that it is going to result in change. And so at the beginning, when you're just stepping through that door, of course, it still might feel like there's this long path, but really a lot of the transformation is in taking that step of understanding and like really being able to see things differently. So really what you're doing is opening the door to healing when you see patterns or, attachment styles, things like that. When you see those, when you acknowledge them, and when you realize that there are going to be ways on the path that change can happen, whether that's pattern interruption, whether it's communication skills and changing, or, some combination thereof. Often it's a lot of different things at once. And so the second point for why we should have so much hope for things changing and our relationship struggles and making our lives better is because there are these tools, and that's what we start to see, right? A lot of the insight into any of these kinds of schemas for what's going on, whether it's attachment style theory or whatever it is, a lot of that is the understanding, starting to understand yourself, starting to understand others, but it's also has these tools that go along with it for change, and they didn't, sometimes if you've seen older attachment style in particular materials, like people didn't always know that there was so much hope for changing. A lot of it used to be more just about understanding. People thought people's attachment styles were completely set, for example. And, it's true for other things as well. They didn't realize how much we could change, but that's not true at all these days. And so really, when you open to this kinds of understandings, then you realize there are tools. So for limiting beliefs and for core wound healing within the attachment style theory and IAT theory, you can, for example, do subconscious reprogramming. As I mentioned, you can also do things like pattern interrupting patterns that you have and making changes and how you think about things and also how you actually act in your own life. And then there's, of course, like I also mentioned, communication skills. And that can be a really huge one, particularly with the relationship struggles, if you're coming in from that route of wanting to change things. And the third reason to have so much hope is because perhaps you are thinking, well, perhaps there's a grain of truth in the fact that you feel like you can't change, in the sense that you're not going to not be you. Okay. Right. So there's this grain of truth in that you're still going to be you. Your personality is still going to be in a lot of ways the same. And that's true for attachment style healing, for example. So in attachment style healing, people will still have these flavors that go along with, their original attachment style, whether it's dismissive avoidant, if they had an insecure one, it'd be dismissive avoidant, anxious preoccupied, or fearful avoidant. They're still going to have like the pieces that affected their personality, like for example, fearful avoidance being, really liking deep connection, that kind of thing. But it's just that it won't be detrimental anymore. So it's not like you won't be you. It's just your patterns and how you're interacting will be changed and will be healthier. And look forward to a series I'm going to do where I talk a little bit more about each of those insecure attachment styles and how that can look, how it looks before and how it looks after, how they're still themselves, but it's changed. Okay, the fourth reason to have so much hope is that in understanding others, so it's kind of back to the understanding, but in understanding others, so more than ourselves, like starting to see how they're either, reacting to something that we're doing, and, from our own attachment style, for example, or if they, we start to see, oh, they probably have this attachment style. So in understanding that, instead of it, sometimes people take that as this negative thing, like, oh, they're that means I can't be in relationship with them. And of course, in taking into account, if you want to be in relationship with someone, what they actually do, of course, does matter and how they're interacting with you. But the fact that you've figured out, that they have this particular attachment style is not at all a cause for not having hope. It's quite the opposite, because as you understand them better, you absolutely it will help you, because you won't personalize as much. So the way you react to them will be very different, because usually before we have that understanding, it's so easy to do this, but we just personalize everything. So, or we have the limiting beliefs about them. So we think that it's something that, is really more about us. That's what I mean by the personalizing, or like how they feel about us, or think about us. When we can start to see like where they're coming from their own background, then it's very different. And there's a lot of reason for hope there. I mean, that of course needs to be combined with understanding that there can be change. And so that actually leads into my fifth reason for hope, which is that, you might ask, well, what if they're not interested in change? What if they're not interested in change in the sense of like the kind of change you might be doing, where it's like really changing patterns, really working on limiting beliefs, that kind of thing. And of course, it's important that they're in a dynamic with you where they're responsive, and there's sort of a baseline level there. But overall, when you change, the dynamic changes, and it's going to change for the better. So occasionally someone changes a dynamic and then they realize there's a deeper problem, or the person just isn't ready to be in a relationship. Something like that happens. But I'd say like 99% of the time, as you shift a dynamic, it's actually going to heal the relationship, right? The interactions in the relationship. And that can be actually separate from their own path of healing, which is kind of amazing, but true. So you doing your own work and changing the pattern of the relationship is key, and you should have so much hope because of that. And then finally, a sixth reason for hope, and this is kind of the broad thing underlying all of this. And like I mentioned, it's really like more in our current thinking and didn't always used to be understood, is how much we just can change. Like just from a neurobiology perspective, we are able to change. It feels like when we're in a pattern, it doesn't feel like that, right? So you have to understand how you feel, and how it feels like you're stuck in a pattern or it just keeps repeating is different from what the possibility is. And so that's like why it's important to have hope. But it's true, and we know that you can change patterns. It can even sometimes take as short as 21 days to change a pattern. That's often a time frame that is talked about in neurobiology. So you can change your wiring. It takes practice, right? It's going to take tools and effort to keep, reinforcing the new and not going back into the old. But it's a process, and it's also not like, one little slip back to the old. I mean, that's not a big deal at all either. And so that's true, so we know that that would be called neuroplasticity, right? So we know that we can rewire. And we also even know that there's neurogenesis now. They used to think we had all the brain cells we'd ever have. And it's true still by the time we were adults. But now they know that there is even some neurogenesis. So if that doesn't give you hope that it's actually true, however it feels in the moment in a pattern, that you can change it, I don't know what will, because they really have all that scientific evidence and discoveries that they've made that are like, just, I think those are like hope on steroids, right? I mean, it's just to imagine that there is that much just plasticity and neurogenesis and being able to change that they even know about on that biological level is amazing. All right, so hopefully, and I'm sure there's more examples, so if you think of more things to have hope, put them in the comments. I mean, I guess another one would just be, people, when people have gone through it like me and gotten to the other side, that can be hopeful in and of itself, because you sort of know there's models out there and it happened for them, so why can't it happen for you? But yeah, I just really hope that this inspires you. There's so many ways also out there to do this work. I mean, some of it can just be from things like these videos. Sometimes there's courses online you can take, or you can work with a coach. Usually you don't, have to work. If you want to do life coaching periodically, sometimes people, continue that. They'll start maybe doing it weekly or biweekly, and then, sometimes they'll just every so often have periods of time when they want to do it more, or they'll just like sort of do a check-in and sort of like whichever topic for them is up for wanting to make it better. We'll work on that monthly. But if it's something like a relationship struggle, or it's just specifically around healing your attachment style, that doesn't necessarily have to be such a long program, even with coaching, because there's very specific things that we'll do. And once we've done all of those, like, it's really about teaching a person to fish. It's so not just giving them a fish. I don't know if you've heard that, but the idea being that it's teaching you to do those things, and then you continue to practice them. And for couples as well, because I'm happy to see couples. Usually how I would do it, it would be a little different from sort of your typical relationship counseling, in that it's more about seeing each individual person. We might like occasionally have two people together. But sometimes that can be helpful to have sort of, if both people really are wanting to work on the aspects of the relationship, that can be helpful to sort of have that objective person and working with each individual person, and then sort of having the sense of the dynamic that can be worked on. That's pretty unusual. Like, absolutely, like, let me know and contact me, below, so we could do the consultation to see if it's a good fit, if that would be you, or you'd want to come together. But it's also true that that's pretty rare, because usually one person is like more at the place where they're ready to work on themselves, or is just more of a attachment style or personal development oriented person who wants to do that. So absolutely, like I said, there's reason for hope anyway, and the relationship dynamic can change even if just one person is doing that depth of work. But I just did want to let you know that that is a possibility, because occasionally that is the case where both people want to do that. In any case, I hope this was really helpful. Let me know in the comments if there's more topics that you would like to hear, and I will see you next time.